welcome everyone tonight to the October 2nd, 2018 City Council meeting, and I would ask that you please silence all electronic devices, please. Mayor Baltutis is unable to be with us tonight. He's under the weather, and we wish him a speedy recovery. So you get me. All right, and if you will join me in tonight's invocation, let us pray. We have been reminded these past few weeks of the enduring power and changeability of nature, of the weather, and its ability to both challenge us and remind us of our vulnerability. We are reminded as well that we are capable of great compassion and generosity when we see our fellow North Carolinians facing hardship and tragedy. Our citizens are capable of tremendous acts of courage and commitment when faced with daunting tasks. Let this spirit of cooperation and problem-solving prevail until those who suffer are safe once again. We are so very grateful for those on our staff whose response has made us proud. Bless this council as we pursue the business of governing, of helping people find solutions to their problems. Keep all of us conscious that we are in this together and that you are with us when we are most at odds and most in concert. And thank you for this moment and this place and all who live and work, learn, and play here. Amen. All right, we have two proclamations to present tonight. And the first one is Community Planning Month. And I would like to recognize Amy Nelson, Director of Planning and Community Development. So this is a proclamation proclaiming October 2018 as Community Planning Month in the City of Burlington. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas community planning can help manage change in a way that provides better choices for how people work, live, and play, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories. And whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorses National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our settlement and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the City of Burlington. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the month of October 2018 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the City of Burlington, North Carolina. This is the second day of October 2018, and it's signed by Mayor Baltutis. Thank you for your efforts in planning. Appreciate it very much. The second proclamation is for Fire Prevention Week, and I'd like to recognize Chief Jay Smith and Assistant Chief Jay and Fire Marshal Jay Medley. So this is a proclamation proclaiming October 7th to 13th, 2018 as Fire Prevention Week in the City of Burlington. Whereas the City of Burlington, North Carolina is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting Burlington, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas Burlington's residents should identify places in their home where fires can start and eliminate those hazards. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas Burlington's residents should install smoke alarms in every sleeping room, outside each separate sleeping area, and on every level of the home. And whereas Burlington's residents should listen for the sound of the smoke alarm, and when it sounds, respond by moving outside immediately to a designated meeting place. Whereas Burlington's residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas Burlington's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention, protection, and education. And whereas Burlington's residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take action to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas the 2018 Fire Prevention Week theme, look, listen, learn, be aware. Fire can happen anywhere, effectively serves to remind us that we need to take personal steps to increase our safety from fire. Therefore, the Burlington City Council hereby proclaims October 7th to 13th, 2018 as Fire Prevention Week throughout the city, and urges all the people of Burlington to be aware of their surroundings, look for available ways out in the event of a fire or other emergency, respond when the smoke alarm sounds by exiting the building immediately, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Burlington Fire Department during Fire Prevention Week 2018, adopted this second day of October 2018 and signed by Mayor Belfast. Thank you for your fire prevention efforts.
Thank you very much.
Really.
Can we have a couple of minutes?
Sure, you can do.
Thank you, council members, for the proclamation. This is something we do on a daily basis, provide fire and life safety education to our residents as well as respond to emergency incidents. It's a special focus at this time of year that comes around that we put a little more emphasis on that and interact with our students as a group more. But I would like to give a second to Chief Madden to let him tell you a little bit about that and some of the things that we're doing.
Thank you. Council, thank you. So Fire Prevention Week is actually a fire prevention month for the Burlington Fire Department. It's something that we practice and that we preach for 12 months out of the year to protect the people of the city of Burlington, also the citizens and visitors. So for this month, we are visiting each school in the city of Burlington from K through 5th grade. We will visit approximately 6,000 kids, and we'll talk to them about fire and life safety. We've also incorporated Smokey the Bear. So he's walking around with us. He's not speaking, but he is trying to teach the little kids about how to be safe for wildfires. This is something that we take very seriously, and we thank you all for your commitments and efforts and not being complacent for Fire Prevention Month. I know it becomes mundane with us doing this theme every year, but we appreciate your efforts, and we appreciate the efforts of the City of Burlington citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's important thinking about those exits, especially if you have young children at home, to think about what you would do. Right. Right now, I'd like to recognize City Clerk Renee Ward, who will ask us about conflicts of interest.
Members of Council, it's my responsibility to remind you of your duty to avoid conflicts of interest. This time, I ask if there are any potential conflicts concerning tonight's agenda items.
And right now, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the September 18th, 2018 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have 3 add-ons this evening. Consent agenda item C, set a date of public hearing, 1198 Colony Avenue voluntary contiguous annexation. Consent agenda item D, set a date of public hearing, 1034 Graham Hopedale Road, non-contiguous voluntary annexation, and a staff report on the Western Electric American Institute of Architects Sustainable Design Assessment Team. I need a motion and a second to approve the add-ons.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda with the add-ons.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. This is the consent agenda. These items are typically non-controversial. If anyone has any questions about the following items, please let us know. Item A, to temporarily close Lexington Avenue from Davis Street to Maple Avenue on October 26, 2018, from 2 p.m. until 3:30 p.m. for the parade lineup during the 8th Annual Downtown Burlington Spooktacular event. Item B, to approve Budget Amendment 2019-15 to allow Recreation and Parks Department to use grant funds received from Piedmont Regional Council of Governments to purchase a variety of tables and chairs for the John Robert Kernodle Senior Center. Item C, to adopt a resolution setting a date of public hearing for October 16, 2018, to consider the 1198 Colony Avenue voluntary contiguous annexation. Item D, to adopt a resolution setting a date of public hearing for October 16, 2018, to consider the 1034 Graham Hopedale Road non-contiguous voluntary annexation. I need a motion and a second to approve or deny the foregoing consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as spelled out.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we get to new business. The City Council will consider a recommendation from the Public Transportation Advisory Commission to approve a Link Transit fare-free day each November for general elections. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Director of Transportation, Mike Nunn.
Good evening, Council. This is an item that I think we discussed at the last meeting. The PTAC met in August, recommended that the election day, general election day in November, be fare-free. In addition to this, they have recommended that it be continued on each year for general election. If you recall, PTAC and the board approved this last November. I think it was November 7th of 2017. So the recommendation is for the fare-free for election day, and if consider as well if you would like to do that for each general election, which is held in November. I can answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mr. Nunn or discussion? All right, seeing none, I need a motion and a second to approve or deny Link Transit fare-free day each November for general elections.
I would move that we adopt that as a policy.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next we have a staff report on the Western Electric American Institute of Architects Sustainable Design Assessment Team, recap and next steps. And I recognize Director of Economic Development, Peter Bishop.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hikes and council members. That is a bit of a mouthful to say, Sustainable Design Assessment Team. I've gotten pretty good at it, though, in the last few weeks. Thank you for having me here. We're going to start off with a little video of some of the footage that was compiled by our staff of the events on the 19th, 20th, and the 21st of this month.
Opportunities here, one of which is to make this site a center for the local community, but also make it a place that people from around the region will come to. So it's both and. A site like this, with 22 plus acres and buildings of plenty, square footage of plenty, you can almost do that. And so that's why to see the breadth of desires from the community, from an economic development component to a fun component. I think many of them can be met.
It's a tremendously exciting opportunity, and I think for us, and the reason we're all here is that we love cities, we love projects, we love puzzles, and trying to bring about something that can really affect a lot of lives is really the ultimate reward.
we'll turn this off real quick, but boy, thanks to our staff. That was excellent. Really appreciate that coming together. And that gives you a little bit of a taste of what we experienced, many of you experienced. So thanks to all of our council members for being present. I'm going to queue up my presentation here and get started. But I'm here to talk about sort of what happens next and give a quick recap of what happened this past Friday on the 19th. So this, just a very quick recap, the SDAT award, the Sustainable Design Assessment Team Award, is a grant from the American Institute of Architects, but it's not your typical grant. We're not necessarily building a thing, like a playground that we get a rec grant or a trail or some other structure. We're really working to build a future. We're working to build, or rebuild rather, a community and a neighborhood with this grant. And rather than receiving a set of dollars and going out and building a project, the resources actually came to us in the personification of these 7 people, this AIA SDAT team. So this grant entailed bringing in a group of professionals, national professionals in many different fields, and working directly with the city of Burlington and the neighborhood and the community, some stakeholders, to set a vision and think bigger than what we can see with our 2 eyes at present. I have the roster of the 7 folks that were here before you, and just a little bit about each. Tom Liebel, our team leader from Baltimore, Maryland, specializes, and he's previously done rehabilitations of military structures and World War II structures. Dominic Wicker was the market guy. He works for a development company in Baltimore, so he was there to give some realism and some pessimism to, how this property could make money going into the future. Terry DeWitt is the person who is responsible for all these great drawings and renderings that you'll see later in the presentation. Chris Harrow is the environmental guru who helped us understand everything about some of the contamination past and present on site and what needs to be done to get through that. And then the Terry Ammons, also an architect out of Petersburg, Virginia, who also happens to be a brewer, talked a lot about brewing beer. And then our 2 AIA staff members, Aaron and Joel, who really were the glue that kept a lot of this team together. There will be tons of thank yous to be made, and I will not make them all. Unfortunately, tonight we'd be here for several hours, but I do want to make a shout out to the Recreation and Parks Department and the staff over at Mako Bigelow Community Center and North Park. They were our hosts. They hosted the team at the Sertoma Shelter, as well as our stakeholder groups on Wednesday. They were fantastic. Everything was amazing, and got rave reviews from our staff team members on that. So just wanted to give them a quick shout out there. So in bringing this team in, we had some goals as a staff, as a city, and also the AIA had some expectations of us and how we can make this work, because really this grant is a collaboration and a partnership between the community, the local government, and the stakeholders and neighborhood. So the first thing they really wanted us to do, and certainly we wanted to do, was to activate the site by bringing people out of it. It's really been sort of this structure that has been impenetrable. It had 4 security gates throughout the years. A lot of clandestine Department of Defense work had been done there. So it really had been a closed site. So you want to activate the site. That demystifies it a little bit. It's not this big scary thing that's just sitting out there vacant when you can reach out and touch it and feel it a little bit. So we did as much as we could on site and with various different people with different activities on site. Another tactic that we used was really making layers of engagement, and that's different folks, different groups from throughout the city of Burlington. So not just folks within the area and the neighborhood of the Western Electric plant. We had a Chamber of Commerce group that came in. The council members, of course, all came in the morning and did some tours as well. We had folks representing the community, folks representing some of the businesses and the job creators in the specific area. So there were multiple layers of people who were present, of many different ethnic and racial backgrounds. And then also we had different opportunities to engage with them. So in addition to going on site for a meeting, they went to the community center and got one-on-one interaction with the team. They got interaction in groups with other members of their peers. They got to walk and take a physical tour on site and see it. So there were many different ways that we engaged with many different people on this site. The next one was probably the hardest one, and that's really what you need to do in a visioning process, is you got to erase some of the doubt that everybody's carrying into the property with them. We've all seen this property, and when you think about 23 acres and 760,000 square feet, it is daunting. It is a little bit scary. And there are a few rumors, and unfortunately the property was previously used as a haunted house site and an airsoft training, so there's things spray painted and props that are put out, so it creates this big perception of an impenetrable property that's impossible to develop. We heard loud and clear from the AIA stat team that it was not impossible to develop. It was certainly not the most contaminated or the worst site that they've ever worked on, and they've done 50+ years of these studies throughout the United States. So it was confidence inspiring to us as a staff, and it also helped the people who were part of the engagement teams and all the community understand that if they broke it into smaller pieces, it was much more digestible. They could understand going forward in those little pieces. And then finally, the intent of this visioning is to set the table for future action. What good is doing a planning document, engaging all these folks and building momentum without a place to go or a way to move forward? So the actual vision and report is a bit of a playbook for the developer and investors on what comes next on the property, but it also helps the community understand how the property moves forward, where they can be a part of it, and then ways that you can activate the site with just a little bit of money, but a lot of effort and community work. So what follows here will be a few images of sort of what took place, and we saw some of this in the video, but we had on-site community meetings. We had 2 of them on Wednesday the 19th, a morning meeting and an evening meeting so that different groups could attend. We did serve breakfast in the morning, and again, this was a combination of one-on-one discussion and group discussion with the AIA team members and members of the general public. Next, we had, also on Wednesday, we had stakeholder focus groups. So this was not open to the public, but these were private invited folks that have a significant interest or a stake in this property, in this area. So members of county government, members of the local community group, of course, AIA members, real estate professionals, et cetera, that all have critical insight that can help shape what this plan and vision would look like, came in and were part of our stakeholder focus groups. And that went excellently over at Mako Bigelow. And then really what was the star of the show, I thought, on Wednesday the 19th was our guided tours of the site for the public. To say that as a staff we were overwhelmed by the number of people who came and were interested and how early they came would be an understatement. We had other activities going on at the time, and I had to run over and start taking care of some of the people who wanted tours. You can see the queue line up here is pretty strong, and that was just as we were getting started. So folks were showing up 45 minutes early to take a tour of this site, of this property that they've probably seen their entire lives living and growing up in Burlington, heard stories, some of them probably boogeyman stories about, what's lurking in the tunnels or whatever out there. But the interest was, and the enthusiasm was evident. It was obvious. This gentleman right here in the corner is peering up at something, this lady here taking a picture. We were lucky people didn't run smack into a wall walking around. They were all so amazed at what they were seeing in this old industrial property. So doing these activities, really getting people active on the site, important for the psyche of the community just as much as it was for the team to see them engaging. So we were very happy with how that turned out. Then all the behind-the-scenes work happened with that team in the Sertoma shelter, and I will share that I brought in my emotional support animal at their request, so that's my 5-month-old Brittany puppy there. They did request a little bit of a break from the monotony, so they wanted to play with the dog. But this is these folks were all in the Sertoma shelter, this room for about probably 12 hours on Thursday and Friday, working on their presentation, talking about all the feedback they received, asking questions, making numerous mapping requests and other data requests of staff that we chased down for them. But it was very much like a war room triage going on in there. And I had to get a picture of Terry DeWitt here. This is just amazing watching him doing his trace renderings and everything, and we'll see those here in a second. So the intent of all this was to take a look at the present, at this sort of decrepit and vacant property that needs investment, and think about a vision of the future. What could it be? And so you're presented an image like this, an empty factory in disrepair. But then you look at the vision and what it could possibly be. and this is, again, Terry's work in drawing this. So turning this plaza space into an active space where you have people about in this setting, and all with just taking a different, set of eyes on it. Similar area here, the same plaza setting, and you see, a farm market, a reunion, other possible active spaces here. And, I'll let the city manager know I did not have any impact on making those awnings that specific color, but I thought you might like that. Another example, this is the large con structure, the biggest facility, the 400,000 square foot building, very high bay. I'm standing up on a balcony taking this photo looking down. And a vision of an indoor soccer field or athletic field or training facility that could happen indoors is presented, looking at these same pictures. And just if you haven't noticed, the pictures are the ones they used to make the traces, so I thought it was kind of cool to look that way. This is the imposing front entrance with its chain link fence. And you look at a potential vision and you have a much more welcoming and open, way. They have a technical college listed there as a possible tenant. A quick note about what exactly this site will be. I think it's important to be clear, and the team did a good job while they were here. Clearly, the city council has not received a rezoning request or a site plan or development plan for this property. So this visioning process was not a set of rights that were, of course, provided by the city. We haven't rezoned anything or approved any new developments. Nothing is necessarily going to happen tomorrow on the site. The intent of this process was to get all the different feedback, throw it against the marketplace and what was affordable and what could be done on the property, and to begin to sketch it to create that vision and talk about the steps to get to that point. So I thought it was important to reference that. And then a few more of the changes of our front elevation and what it possibly could be in the future, with some dressing up and some new tenants. And then finally, sort of an interior cafe. These are all blacked out sawtooth mill windows up here that could be cleaned up. And the entire property is pitch black almost inside, but all because they've used asbestos and paint to cover up all the windows. So there's tons of natural light opportunities in these properties. So these slides, these next three slides are directly from the AIA presentation that they provided on Friday night at ABSS's offices. So this is the AIA SSTAT team's next steps, what they believe the community, the city, the property owner should do as far as next steps on this property. The first and most important, don't be afraid. And I think we talked a little bit about that already, but don't be intimidated by the site. Look at it as bite-sized portions. And also look at it as a way to buttress or reinvigorate a community development strategy. A lot of the work in approaching this grant started back in the mid-2010s when the city underwent its community assessment studies, when it was doing the preparations for the comprehensive plan and its preparations for bringing on an economic development office, was to look at underperforming legacy industrial sites in the city or other properties that need assistance in marketing, that need tools and ways to get back to performing status. Certainly, finding this grant and a partner and a way forward is one of the ways that we're working with council to achieve that strategy. And really, it's setting an additional page or set of pages to a community development strategy by providing a very specific plan. It's almost a small area plan in some senses, not as technical and certainly not as detailed, but it has some of those same aspects to it. And of course, discussion about site control and what site control looks like in the future with this ownership group. More of the AIA team's next steps. Of course, the easy and first steps is make it look better. So there has been some landscaping work that's happened on the property. There could be more. I was out there myself with my weed eater trimming things up before the event. So more work could be done to make it more appealing visually. And then that starts making it easier to activate some of the outside space outside of the fence line by using that front lawn for farmers markets or public events, working on things that relate to the quality of life within the neighborhood. And then something we've started using with our Western Electric webpage, but certainly something we'd be open to an outside organization assisting with, is really trying to build the history around this property and its importance to the city and what it's been over the many years. And then the final steps that were addressed by the SDAT team, and these were, again, things that they put together from feedback and other things they had learned in their visit, working on the Church Street corridor, working a lot with art installations and public art, and using this as an artistic space. There was a lot of discussion about Burlington's art options and wanting to have more of them and more diverse options, and there were a lot of there's a lot of opportunities on this property with some of the plaza settings to do outdoor and public art and to do some art installations. So that was one of the themes that we heard a lot from the SDAT team and from the people. So in addition to those recommended steps from the AIA folks, what we're expecting as a council and a city is in about 3 months to receive a final report. Now, what the presentation and some of the things we've already posted on the site are preliminary in nature. The team was only here for 2.5, 3 days, so they want to really dig in deeper to our comprehensive plan, some of the other planning work and other work that the city's provided to them, and get a little more clear and concise. There may be some suggestions that they made previously that they'll find we have a plan for that, and they'll just plug into that rather than making a suggestion that isn't linked to something. So they'll continue working on this project and provide us that written report, and then the city will be convening with our stakeholder committee group and some of our focus group members to discuss with them what next steps are and talk about some of the implementation things that we expect to be discussed with that team. And a final reminder, I wanted to, again, plug the website that we put together, burlingtonnc.gov/Western Electric. The presentation from Friday the 21st is available on that site. We're working to get additional video resources up on the site as well, and we have just thousands of pictures that the SDAT team members took and staff took that we're sifting through, and we'll get out all the blurries and the blinks and get them all up there as soon as we can. But there's also a feedback form on this website where if anybody didn't have a chance to engage with staff or the SDAT team a few weeks back, there's a form they can provide us some information and tell us a story or give us more on what they may have about the plan. So I've just done a lot of talking. Would love to hear some of your talking and some questions or comments.
Comments from council?
Peter, I know we've got a fairly new property owner.
Yes.
There. What is his vision or the entity that owns the property? What is their vision, and how does it sort of coincide with some of the things that we're talking about here?
So my initial conversations with the property owner and some of his representatives immediately after the presentation was to develop the remediation plan first. So how can I start getting these buildings active? What do I need to do from a permitting standpoint, from the U.S. Army and DEQ standpoint, so that I don't run afoul of those regulatory agencies? So the direct request was to how could I start getting active on some of these buildings and get them working again? And then the second one was how soon is the final report going to be? And I want to be able to take this to market and see what interest I have amongst potential clients for the uses that are explained in this plan. So there was enthusiasm and interest in moving forward relatively quickly on doing some of the small things in the site cleanup.
And can we provide assistance to helping get through that process with DOD or whomever?
We're working with DOD folks to arrange that initial meeting where we'll set up what the remediation steps should be and what that permitting process looks like and who's talking to whom about what activities are happening on site. So very soon.
One of the things that I thought was really good about the whole process was the way I started to rethink that particular piece of property. I think I'd always had it in my mind that somebody someday was going to take it over and do something wonderful with it. And I think this made it more realistic and also helped me see it as a historic. That didn't occur to me before. I mean, it is a piece of our history, and people are pretty fascinated by that, as witnessed by some of the people who showed up to see it. So I think it was a very worthwhile process.
Yeah, we had, near the end of our first night, we had an elderly couple come in that had just missed the tours, and I believe we had a staff member run and do them a special tour. They had been married, I think, 35 years and met at the Western Electric property and had just come back to check it out again. And I mean, we met the foreman of the property in 1991 who helped lock the gates when it was, you know, game over. So many people with different anecdotal stories about their grandparents or parents. It was really amazing and touching. So.
I believe Representative Ross shared with me his father worked there, and that's the first time he's ever been on the property. And that struck me that's the true story for lots of people. Yeah. That you have an invested history there, but you've never been allowed inside the gate. I didn't realize that until he shared that with me.
It was not a family-friendly operation.
I will say that our tours and all of our engagement activities were surprisingly very family-friendly. We had several families that came out and brought their children and grandchildren to tour the facility. I know if I were a kid out there, I'd have been running past the caution tape left and right, so God bless those parents for bringing their kids out there. But it was a great time for all of us. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for your leadership in this.
You're very welcome.
Kathy, Peter did a wonderful job, and we can't thank him enough, but the work he put in to get things ready for them. You do all this work in a short period of time. It takes a lot of paddling below the surface to make that happen. And so, Peter, thank you very much.
I appreciate that.
The final report's out.
Yes.
We'll reconvene and discuss.
We'll discuss anything that is maybe fundamentally different than our understanding today. We'll talk about the formation of an implementation team and what that looks like and what it actually means for council members in your daily actions, what it may mean for our planning processes and budgeting processes going forward for projects in that neighborhood, in that area. Those specific items, yes. And since we did a few thank yous, I definitely won't get to all of them, but we had a core staff team that really, if you're going to say thanks to me, I got to say thanks to the better halves of everything. So Morgan Laster, the community engagement manager with the city, and Rachel Kelly, assistant manager for administration, Blake Moyer, the intern in the community engagement office, all the department heads behind me and who maybe aren't even here, and members of their staff that really went above and beyond. Our GIS coordinator was producing documents at 9 o'clock at night at their request. I mean, people really were doing some great work for us, and you know, it never happens without a team. So I was happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Peter. No one signed up for public comments, but I think we may have some students here, possibly. Anybody want to identify themselves and tell us where you're from? Come on, somebody can do it.
I can speak to that. So my name is Robert Alvis. I'm a teacher at Williams High School. So I teach civics and government at Williams High School. There's another teacher there, Adam Crow, as well. We have a project that we do at Williams that asks students to be civically engaged when they take our government class. So several of our students are here being civically engaged by attending a city council meeting. So on behalf of Williams High School, we just want to say thank you to all the council members for letting us be able to come out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you're a student from Williams, stand up so they can see where you're from.
Wow, thank you for being here. Does anybody have any questions for us that came up during the meeting? Well, maybe tomorrow you can ask your. What was that all about? Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you coming out and seeing what your city government is actually doing. It's a valuable thing to do.
It's just great to see civics still being taught.
Yeah.
It's part of the curriculum.
It certainly is. All right. Now, any council members have any comments you want to make? All right, I just have a few announcements. We have a free electronics waste collection event on Saturday, October 6th, this one coming up, 9 to 2. That's at 234 East Summit Avenue, the Public Works parking lot. And we do that quarterly to have free e-waste recycling so that our citizens have an option for how to get rid of electronic waste and keep it out of our landfill. And we have loose leaf collection that will begin October 15th, and I think recently the paper carried a zone, or it was may have been our Burlington information that came out with our water bills. And then Belong in Burlington is going to be held October 24th from 6 to 7:30, and maybe you students would pass this along as well. We're trying to give people ways to attach to Burlington and to claim it as their city and to get involved. And we have lots of opportunities for people to meet people who are doing things in the community, and you can learn about different departments in the city. And all new people, newcomers are welcome, and anybody, we've had lots of people who have come who have lived here all their life but decided that they really wanted to jump in and do some things, and so they have come to it. So it's pretty much open to any citizen, but that's October 24th from 6 to 7:30. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Adjourn.